for this question, the first thing to notice is that you have a variable in the exponent. So you have an exponential term, but not only that, you have an exponent, or you have a variable as a base. So you are looking at a variable to a variable. And we talked about how when you have a variable to a variable, your only plan of action, unfortunately, is log differentiation. So what you have to do is you first have to take the natural log of both sides and simplify. And what we do is to have another side of the equation, we set this, of course, equal to y if it's not already there. All right, so we're going to take the natural log of both sides. We're going to have the natural log of y equals the natural log of x minus 8 to the 4x. Now, the whole purpose of this is to simplify. So we go through our log properties. We don't have multiplication. We don't have division, but we do have this power, and that power by log properties can come down in front as a coefficient. So this 4x can scoot down in front, and we'll get 4x times the natural log of x minus 8. Okay, so that is our simplification using log properties. So now we're in the position to take the derivative. Now, when we take the derivative, you have 4x here, which is a variable expression, times another variable. And when you have a variable times a variable, you have to use the product rule. And for that reason, we say that, when you're bringing down the power, it becomes a coefficient. The next step is probably going to be the product rule. And this is going to hold true for any time you have this structure of variable to a variable. It's going to be the power becomes coefficient, and then you go into the product rule. All right, so let's go into the product rule. Our first function is going to be 4x, and the second function is going to be natural log of x minus 8. First function's derivative is 4. Second function's derivative, we see this little ln, and that tells us that we are going to use the u prime over u. So we'll have the argument in the denominator, and then the derivative of the argument, which is just 1. Okay, so then we do the little crisscross, and that's going to be the right-hand side derivative. Now, the left-hand side we talked about, because we're dealing with natural log of y, is always going to be y prime over y. And then the right-hand side, we're going to do this cross, so it's going to be 4 times natural log of x minus 8, and then plus 4x times 1 over x minus 8. All right, so at this point, you could combine this as one fraction. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cross this out and say that this is 4x over x minus 8. Okay, now after you take your derivative, you've got to solve for y prime. So to solve for y prime, we're going to multiply by y, and then we're going to substitute y's definition in. All right, so if I multiply by y here, they cancel. If I multiply by y here, nothing cancels. So I'm going to substitute in the definition of y, and that definition of y comes from the very top of the problem. This is y, so I'm going to substitute this in for y. So it will be y prime is equal to x minus 8 to the 4x, and then in parentheses, we'll have all of this. So it'll be 4 natural log x minus 8 plus 4x over x minus 8. And that is your final answer. And I'm sorry, it's a little skewed there.